Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Smith. I'm the director of STEDI.org. We want to welcome you to the webinar this morning. Want to make sure that I'm being heard and that we're all communicating. In your chat, can you open up the chat window? In the chat window, if you'll just go ahead and type in where you're from, what city you're from. For example, I'm going to type in, hi, Jeff from Logan, Utah. So good. So we do have, good. That's always good to see that you have, when I see the messages come across, that means the audio is working and everyone can hear me. So that's good. Appreciate your attendance here today and thank you. And you're more than welcome to post any questions, not only in the chat feature or in the question and answer. And today we have three of us on chat here, so we can help answer the questions. Some of these we might answer live through the webinar. Some we might go ahead and just answer individually through the chat. So please feel free to either post questions or there on the chat or in the question and answer section. So, and I'm assuming everybody can see my screen as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and start. I'd like to introduce you to those who are presenting here today. It is Jessica Smith, our trainer here at STEDI.org. She writes a lot of curriculum as well as trains online and on site, and just a delight. And if you've ever seen her present, she definitely has a good time and relates extremely well with the students. Has been a teacher herself and a substitute teacher herself, as well as being here at STEDI.org for nearly 10 years now. And Kelly Stone, she's our district coordinator. She works with school districts and organizations across the country, and there isn't anything that she knows that there isn't anything that can't be asked that she doesn't know the answer to. So please feel free to ask any questions or comments as we go along. So Jessica and Kelly, we're glad you're here, and thanks for presenting. I'm going to just say a few things about what's happening today. Today we're going to talk about live and on-site training. This is training that is conducted at the site, at the school district, or in a school, but it's local. And we're going to talk about the advantages of these live trainings and who are doing live trainings and how a district can implement live training. We also, in 2 weeks from today, on February 11th, going to be talking about online training, the advantages of online training. Both the on-site training, the live training, and the online training do consist of the same material presented in different ways. And we'll talk a little bit about how that is done on live, and then we'll also in 2 weeks talk about the online and the advantages to that. So, and you can register if you haven't already registered for that. We just have the link there at stedi.org/administrators. You're welcome to go there and download today's slides if you haven't already. We can also email you those. This webinar is being recorded. Let me look. Yes, it shows that it is being recorded. And so we will have that posted, and we'll send out a link to all those who've registered and where they can view that, so you can listen to that again if you'd like. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about, well, with the impact of training on school, on what's happening. If a district organization isn't training substitute teacher, it does increase the complaints registered against substitute teachers. When a training has been implemented, we've seen a significant decrease in complaints registered, and that's really what keeps us out of the headlines of the newspapers. That takes care of a lot of issues between the parents and substitute teachers, as well as the administrators, and it's very important to decrease these complaints. Also, another fact of little or no training is it decreases the ability or opportunity to set expectations and improve performance of substitute teachers. In a training, you can say, this is how we expect you to act professionally. We expect you to show up on time. We also expect you to manage the classroom, and we're going to show you exactly how to do that. Jessica will cover that today in the training. But you can set expectations. Substitute teachers know exactly what you want out of them. And this is a great time to set the bar high. We're educators, we're professionals in the classroom, and we expect individuals to perform that way. And we found that most people, when expectations are set, they rise to that expectations. And so it's a good time to be able to do that. And so not only those two things happen, decreasing complaints and increasing the performance of substitute teachers, but it also impacts student achievement. When a substitute teacher can keep students on task, it does improve student achievement, and they can continue the learning even while the permanent teacher is out of the classroom. Today's training, and both the live and online, the material is found in the Substitute Teacher Handbook, and this is probably the core of what we have to offer in here. It's been many, many years of research. When we developed the training, we worked with school districts across the country, and we found out what they needed to have training: classroom management, teaching strategies, being prepared and professional. That was the number one thing that the administrators wanted, is their substitutes to be prepared and professional. The ability to work with students with special needs, and then the permanent teachers, their favorites. We asked who their favorite substitute was and why, and without exception, it was Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, because they had a resource kit, a bag of tricks, and so things that they could pull out at a moment's notice. And all this is taught in the handbook, and so this is the foundation. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here today. In fact, I've asked Kelly, since she works with school districts, would you mind reviewing with us those districts? This is just a sampling of districts and organizations who use the handbooks for training.
Hi, this is Kelly. I hope you can all hear me. And as the district coordinator, I probably have spoken with some of you before, or at least been in touch with you via email, but I'm happy to be part of this webinar today. And if we move on to this, Jeff, maybe you can help me out here because my screen's not moving.
Still not moving. It says waiting for you to take control. So is this?
I did click on it.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, let me go back.
There you go.
Okay, so here you can see a list of just some of the colleges and universities that use our training, our handbooks for the trainings that they offer and use at those colleges. You know, Lone Star College, community colleges are throughout Texas. We've got the Miami-Dade community colleges, which are all throughout the Miami-Dade County. And so we have a lot of colleges that are using us. Going on to the next screen, we have large districts that use us. I wonder sometimes, wouldn't it be easier just to do the training, require the online training with so many substitute teachers that they have to just have that do it on their own. But actually, in talking to these districts, they still like to have the live trainings face-to-face where they are able to see their substitutes. So it doesn't matter if you're in a really big district, if you're willing to just maybe have more trainings more often, then you could still get these substitutes into a setting where they are able to interact with each other and to practice the training that you're giving them, with each other. Your trainer can model the behavior to these subs as they're learning. And so it's still something that works even in these large districts. And then you can see in the medium-sized districts that, in Colorado and Florida, Palmdale in California, they've been using these handbook trainings, live trainings, for many years, and it's something that they find very effective for them. And I'm going to turn the time over now to Jessica, where she can talk with you about the actual training.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're eager to have you. It looks like we've got several online and several people that we know. Kelly would probably know more of you than I do, but we have several that have several listening. Melissa, it looks like you guys have quite a crew there, and Kim, you have quite a crew. I want to hear I'm going to get your fingers working for those who are listening via your computer. Have your fingers ready at the chat. I want to hear how many of you are currently training your substitute teachers. And if it's, so Danya, she's training substitute teachers. I forgot where. Judy, Marcia, you're training substitute teachers. Melissa, you are. Amanda, thanks for sharing. So Forsyth County Schools. Now, Angie, I see Knoxville does train their substitutes. We love training substitutes there, but I thought your schools were closed. Are you working today? From what we read, Knoxville schools had to close the rest of the week. It sounded kind of like you've got something crazy going on there. So Duncanville does face-to-face training. Oh, great. It looks like many of you. Oh, Angie says the central office is open. So she has to work, but they had so many people calling in with sicknesses that they closed the schools. So I hope you don't get anything, Angie. That flu is pretty nasty this year. So it looks like we have several that are training already, which we love to hear. I love doing substitute teacher trainings. Many of the districts nationally have invited us to come do live trainings there, and it is such a joy to be face-to-face with the substitute teachers. They're eager to do a good job. They're eager to rise to whatever expectation is set. I want to hear now, are you do you train substitute teachers live or online? Let's see if I can move the screen here. Oh, there we go. Do you train your substitute teachers in person? So Robin says they train their substitute teachers live, which is great. I'd like to hear from those who have bigger districts too, the biggest districts. Do you train your substitute teachers live? Kimberly says they train theirs live. Amanda says they train their substitutes in person. Renee is in person. Melissa says both online and live. Alexis says face-to-face training. That's great. Susan, they train face-to-face. Oh yes, Angie says with Knoxville they do, they have twice a month of training, Eastside HSD. Becky says they're not. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for sharing. Danya says they train quarterly. All right, that's great to hear. All right, so when we do trainings, I want to ask, Angel knows that I ask this question a lot. It's important for us to recognize, what do we want our substitute teachers to know from the training? What skills do you want them to have? Let's see. Angie says classroom management. That is the #1 concern for brand new teachers, substitute teachers, and permanent teachers alike. Probably it's one of your highest concerns as well, because you have to deal with the complaints. So Renee says emergency procedures. Melissa mentioned classroom management, but also building a rapport in a short amount of time. Amanda says common sense. Yes, it's so funny how we say common sense, but it's not so common sometimes. She also added instructional skills. Danya says to be able to facilitate any lesson so that the lesson plan can be continued. That's a great one. I like these responses. Thanks for sharing. Kimberly says, skills that are useful across grade levels, different disciplines. Yes, substitute teachers do have a wide variety. So that was my favorite part about substitute teaching, is I had no idea what I would be walking into that day. And that's what I really enjoyed. As a permanent teacher, I could create consistency in my classroom, and obviously we all love consistency, but being a substitute teacher is quite an adventure. Alexa says following the lesson plan left by the teachers. Phoebe shares that it would be nice if a person could jump into special education and bilingual classrooms and be flexible with that. Marcia shares classroom management. The one other thing I bet you would also add is professionalism. arriving on time? How many of you would like to have everyone arrive at least 20 minutes early, stay for a few minutes after the bell? Being a professional substitute teacher in and out of the classroom. So as Jeff mentioned earlier, one advantage to training is to set the bar evenly across the district. Oh, Angie also added, this is a good point. I'm glad you brought this up, Angie. We want subs to work more than one day a month. So training helps that as well, because people feel a lot more confident when they're trained. Oftentimes, and maybe Jeff can talk more about this later, after a district has implemented training, districts will often have more applicants because people will think, well, I would love to be a substitute teacher, but I do not have the skills to walk into a class full of teenagers and know what to do. And so when a district can provide the skills needed, oftentimes they get a higher quality pool, not only because they're trained, but they get individuals who know that they might not have the skills needed, but after having skills, they're eager to assist the district. Now, this is always really interesting to me, this next slide. Why is it important for us to train substitute teachers? Oftentimes, I think it's easy to assume that the money might be not worthwhile if we train our substitute teachers, but here is the latest research about the substitute teachers nationally. Teachers who feel unprepared, 62% of certified teachers feel unprepared. 42% of substitute teachers in your district want to continue as a substitute teacher. And this is new in the last few years, where we have career substitute teachers. We find that previously, in years earlier, about 3 years, every 3 years a district would have a new pool, and that's not the case anymore. There are people who we know for years and years that love being a substitute teacher and would continue for years to come. So, and then additionally, 40% of your pool want a permanent position in your district. So maybe they're working to become a permanent teacher in your district. There's just substitute teaching in the interim, and kind of getting to know. As a substitute teacher, I substitute taught to get to know the districts in my area before I selected a job. It was really fun to kind of see how different districts implemented things, as well as I loved seeing how different teachers implemented skills and expectations in their classroom. It helped me know how I wanted to set up my classroom when I became a permanent teacher. All right, so training substitute teachers is worth the time and the money because people are wanting to stay in your district. Now, is this a surprise to you, or is this what you're seeing in your district as well? I'd love to hear if this matches what you see in your district with your substitute teaching pool, or is this surprising that so many people would want to stay in your district? All right, we have a few people coming in saying, yeah, that's consistent with what they're seeing. That's good. All right. Amanda, you said you think the number is higher for your district, so you have more that would like to stay. That's impressive. Oh, that's good. Danya mentioned that most of their paraprofessionals are hired from their substitute teaching pool. So that is, again, they want a permanent position in your district. That's good.
Jess,
or stay.
Jess,
yeah, please jump in.
So the 42% of substitute teachers want to stay, and 40 want a permanent position as a permanent teacher. So you add those two together, 82%.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So when you train your pool, 82% of the people in your training will want to stay within your district. So we tend to think, oh, if we train, spend some money training substitutes, they'll be gone tomorrow, or they're working with another district. Well, the statistics doesn't show that. And so it's well worth the investment, because you're going to keep them in your pool in front of your kids for a long time.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. Now, Melissa said that they've had over 500 people hired into permanent positions. That is impressive. So if I'm understanding that correctly, Melissa, 500 people from your sub pool got hired into the school full time. That's amazing. Correct. Oh, good. That is great. Great job, you guys. So Phoebe asked the question, and I'll pose this to all of you who have long-term sub positions, and as you think of responses, share them, and we can talk more about it at the end. But Phoebe wants to know how to make long-term substitute teaching so attractive so that more people stay. And is that, Phoebe, to you want more people to take long-term substitute teaching positions, or you want them to stay long-term as in for years and years and years? So if you'll clarify that question for me, that would be great. Angie says a lot of their substitute teachers use that as a foot in the door, use substitute teaching as a foot in the door. Phoebe says they want people to stay long-term. So what can we do to make substitute teaching so attractive they stay long-term? And this is a great question. So as responses come in, we can share this more at the end. Just remind me to revisit that, Phoebe, if you would. All right, so let's see here. So as mentioned before, this is the outline to the Substitute Teacher Handbook. And when I do live trainings, I'm going to come back to this slide. We'll come back to this in just a minute. So at a live training, trainers should model what we expect from substitute teachers. And this, to me, is the foundational piece of any live training that I do. And Kelly will talk more about how to know how we train. She'll give you the in on that. But this means that trainers should not be lecturing at all. We wouldn't expect substitute teachers to lecture when they go into a class because they don't know the content. And so we want to model that for them by making sure we're engaging each of the learners. We want to model that we would greet each student at the door and direct them to a starter activity. So that should be done in a live training as well. We should also set up our training where learners teach each other. And so I'm going to go back to the previous slide. And so we put all the expertise into the Substitute Teacher Handbook. And we do this so that teachers can teach each other in a live training. So when I come to do a live training, what it looks like is when a learner walks in, there are tables of about 5 to 6 people. There are groups of 5 to 6 people. So the tables are put together. There's markers on the table. There's poster paper on the walls. There's Post-it notes and stickers, and they get a colored sticker when they walk in the door. And this is to set the tone that this is going to be a different day than just lecturing. I see so many books walking in people's bags when they come walking in the door, and never once in my live trainings has somebody pulled out their novel, even as engaging as the latest James Patterson book is, I'm sure. But they've never pulled out their book, because the training is engaging them in learning and teaching from each other. And that's the advantage to having a handbook, is you really can facilitate learning rather than lecturing. So the Substitute Teacher Handbook first covers classroom management. And that was your number one concern. And this classroom management, you'll have to stop me from talking too much about it, because I love classroom management. It teaches 5 skills that every educator should know. Those who are have been permanent teachers that attend our live trainings, afterwards they'll say, I was so annoyed I had to come, but you taught me so much, and I wish I would have known this prior to entering the classroom as a permanent teacher. And I was like, I totally know what you mean. It also covers teaching strategies, which is how to implement a teacher's lesson plan. Oftentimes the lesson plan will say, just show the video, and that's good. But in the teaching strategies section, we cover how to make that even a more effective lesson by engaging with the KWL chart, so students learn at a higher level. Being prepared and professional, working with students with special needs, and then there are over 100 fill-in activities that a substitute teacher can download in a wide variety of content areas. All right, let's see. So here we go with the Substitute Teacher Handbook. This is our 9th edition. And then oftentimes in live trainings that I've done, learners will come, the substitute teachers will attend so that they can get a pay raise. And so a district will say, if you attend this live training, you can get a pay raise. And how they do this is they base it on the assessment. So a substitute teacher will take their handbook home, will have been through the whole handbook, but just very briefly. Then they'll go study it on their own and then take our assessment online. And once they pass with an 85%, when they submit that to the district, that's when their increase in pay starts. So that's how a couple of districts use also the assessment as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn this.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, if you do it, you can do this as if it's no big deal. You can stand in front of a group and go ahead and implement the training just in your sleep. For someone who's never done this before, you have written a what? May I ask?
Yeah, so Kelly is going to talk about the sub-trainer manual, and this is everything I would do. Sometimes a trainer who knows less can run a more effective training because they say less, they're lecturing less, and they're working on helping everybody teach each other. So for example, when everybody has a copy of the Substitute Teacher Handbook, they'll learn one of the skills in classroom management. So I mentioned before there are 5 skills. As one group, they're going to learn one of the skills, then they break up into a different group where there are 5 people and each person knows one of the skills, and then they teach each other. We all know that we learn something best that when we teach somebody else. And so that's the whole point of the training, is to really facilitate it rather than teach it. I think Blaine, who was the previous trainer, he would say, I'm the guide on the side. So the expertise is in the handbook so that it encourages substitute teachers to teach each other and thus learning at a higher level. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I think the brilliance of the sub-trainer manual is that it sets it up so you use the teaching strategies that you expect the substitute teachers to use in the classroom. You use those teaching strategies in the training workshop, and so they're seeing it modeled by the instructor. They're also seeing it modeled by other participants, and they're modeling it themselves. So when they're done with the day workshop, Jessica, just like you've said, they have actually taught each other, and they've presented, and they've acted as if they are the facilitator, as they would do in the classroom, and they can see it. And so when they're done, they have seen it in the instructor, the facilitator, they've seen it in each other, and then they have that resource with the handbook. So the sub-trainer manual is key to implementing a live training. All right, I noticed Kelly. Go ahead. So Kelly, looks like you have.
Yes, I'm here. I was just trying to move along, but I wanted to add too that I just think that it's wonderful for every one of those substitutes to have that handbook as a resource for themselves, going forward. It's amazing how often somebody will do the online training and still contact us afterwards to get a copy of the handbook so that they can keep it as a resource down the road. It's just a wonderful thing to keep in their sub pack, to have at home, wherever they're going to, want to look for an answer, dealing with something that happened in the classroom that day. So we love for them all to have that handbook available to them. Moving forward, when you've made the decision that you want to implement live training in your district and with your substitute teachers, I'm the person that you want to call. You can get in touch with me about pricing, the delivery options we have, and if you want, a free copy of the handbook so you can take a look at it, see what's included in it, and all the great things we're saying about it. You'll be able to see it's all true. We're not making anything up here. We'd love to send you a copy of that, and we can also make the sub-trainer manual available to you so that you can see how that works hand in hand with the handbooks. So it's just a great thing that Jessica's created, for your trainers to be able to use that sub-trainer manual in presenting the handbook lessons, to the substitutes there. I imagine some of you have questions. This would be a good time if you want to type in questions either through the chat or the Q&A. And depending on what your question is, Jessica or Jeff or one will answer for you. I see Renee has said that she'd like to have the handbook and manual. We'd be happy to send you a copy of both. That's Greenville, right? I used to live in Greenville. Do we have any other questions? You definitely can contact me. I guess it's not right there, but my phone number here is 435-755.
Go to the next screen, and I think you've got your contact.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there you go.
Right here. Okay. So there's my contact information.
And
in case you were not writing it down.
Phoebe, you asked, you wanted to emphasize that it was how to retain substitutes as substitutes, not necessarily as permanent teachers. And we have found that when training is implemented, it sure makes those individuals who are part-time in the classroom, because it's a skill that you have to develop. And if they have the training, then they know what they need to do on a daily basis, and it builds that confidence. They tend to work more often. We've seen that feedback from organizations when they've implemented training, that subs tend to work more often, and then they stay longer because they're having much better experiences with the students. And so it does help them want to be a substitute teacher longer because they enjoy it. There are those that just will love it, and there are some of those kind of people that are just I don't think they're human because they want to work in the middle schools. Now, that go figure. No, I'm teasing, but they love those age kids, and they can sub in those, and they love to do those type of thing as well as them. Everybody has their preference, which is fun and fine, but it's fun to see them when they gain the confidence to want to be able to do more. All right, 30 minutes. We promised 30 minutes. Please feel free to ask Kelly any more questions. Her email is there, and again, she can send out a copy of the sub-trainer manual, and go ahead, and she can have also help train your trainer. We can do that as well, so you can do this online and on site. And like Jessica said, it really is fun to see them. They're thirsty for this kind of information, and they love it when they can learn and gain confidence, and also they can recognize what it takes to be a great teacher, and they want to do that. People really want to do a good job, and by helping set them up with the proper tools, it makes a difference. So this is the end of the formal presentation. Again, please feel free to reach out to Kelly and get those things, and we'd be glad to help you with your training of substitute teachers. Again, register for the webinar in 2 weeks. We'll talk about online training. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye now.
Okay, everybody.